is a place on this earth that has existed for over 55 million years. It covers nearly 3 million square miles. It produces 20% of the oxygen you are breathing right now. And yet, scientists estimate that less than 10% of it has ever been truly studied. Not explored, not mapped, not understood. The Amazon does not reveal itself. It permits observation briefly, selectively, on its own terms. Every year, researchers enter its interior with modern equipment, satellite imaging, and decades of training. Many return with something unexpected. Some return with questions they cannot fully answer. And some simply do not return with what they were looking for. What lives inside the Amazon is not fully known. What has been documented is already difficult to account for. This is not a list of animals. This is an entry point into a place that has never been fully entered. Number 10. The apex constrictor green anaconda. Eunectes murinus. Begin with what you think you know. A snake. Large, dangerous, found in South America. That description, while accurate, is architecturally incomplete. The green anaconda found in the Amazon basin is not simply a large snake. It is an organism that has remained functionally unchanged for millions of years, operating in an environment so dense and so dark that its full behavioral range has never been observed in the wild. What has been documented is already remarkable. Specimens have been measured at over 20 feet in length. Their body diameter at full mass can exceed 12 inches. And when this animal makes the decision to constrict, the pressure exerted on its prey has been measured at approximately 450 newtons per square centimeter. To give that a frame of reference, that is sufficient force to collapse the rib cage of most large mammals before they lose consciousness. The anaconda does not use venom. It does not need to. It waits. Then it applies pressure, systematically, methodically, without apparent urgency. Researchers who have observed anacondas in controlled environments note something that is difficult to categorize. The animal appears to assess its environment with a patience that seems disproportionate to its neurological complexity. It does not strike impulsively. It positions. It waits. It chooses its moment with what can only be described as deliberation. Whether that constitutes intelligence in any meaningful sense remains a question without a definitive answer. What is not in question is this: in the deeper river systems of the Amazon interior, there are anacondas that have never been measured. Specimens reported by indigenous communities in remote regions describe animals whose dimensions exceed anything currently in the scientific record. Those accounts remain unverified. They have not been disproven either. Illegal poaching of green anacondas for their skin continues to accelerate. Some researchers now estimate that if current rates of both poaching and deforestation continue, the deep interior populations, the ones least studied, may disappear before they are ever fully documented. What lives in those interior waters would be lost without ever having been seen. That is perhaps the most unsettling dimension of this story. Not what is known about this animal, but what may be lost before it can be known at all. Number 9. The Black Emperor, Black Caiman, Melanosuchus niger. There is a moment, documented by researchers entering certain Amazon river systems at night, where the surface of the water appears to be watching. Not moving, not disturbing. Simply watching. What they are seeing are the reflective eyes of black caimans, positioned just above the waterline, motionless. Observing. The black caiman is the largest predator in the Amazon basin. It is not the largest crocodilian on Earth, but it may be the most ecologically dominant in its specific environment. Its scales carry a darkness that is not merely coloration. In certain lighting conditions, the skin appears to absorb light rather than reflect it, a characteristic that makes it effectively invisible in the deep, tannic waters of the Amazon. After dark, its jaw strength exceeds that of any other living animal relative to its body size. At full adult length, sometimes reaching 16.5 feet, a black caiman can generate a bite force sufficient to fracture the skull of a fully grown tapir or capybara in a single movement. But the more disturbing detail is behavioral. The black caiman does not hunt exclusively from the water. Documented accounts describe individuals moving through dense jungle undergrowth on land, tracking prey in darkness, covering distances that challenge the assumption that these animals are primarily aquatic hunters. Some researchers suggest that the full terrestrial range of black caiman behavior has been severely underestimated, that what has been observed near riverbanks represents only a fraction of what this animal actually does when no one is watching. And in the Amazon, most things happen when no one is watching. The black caiman is now under increasing pressure. Illegal logging operations remove the dense vegetation that provides both concealment and thermal regulation for this species. Conservative projections suggest that without intervention, the black caiman could face functional extinction within 50 to 60 years, not disappearance. Functional extinction. The difference is important. The animal may persist in small, fragmented populations, reduced to a shadow of its former ecological role, unable to function as the apex regulator it was designed to be. When a top predator loses its function, the ecosystem below it begins to unravel. And in the Amazon, that unraveling would not be visible until it was already irreversible. Number 8. The river shadow giant river otter, Pteronura brasiliensis. This is where the comfortable narrative begins to shift. The word otter carries a particular set of associations: playful, social, relatively harmless. The giant river otter of the Amazon does not conform to that image. It reaches lengths of 6 to 7 feet. It is highly intelligent, demonstrating tool use, coordinated hunting strategies, and according to several field researchers, what appears to be deliberate communication during group hunts. It operates in family groups called giant otter communities, and these groups function with a coordination that researchers have described as methodical. Each individual in the group appears to understand its role during a hunt. Prey is not simply chased, it is directed, corralled, and eliminated with a precision that seems disproportionate for an animal classified as semi-aquatic. Their diet is expansive: river fish, freshwater crabs, small caimans, aquatic invertebrates. The giant river otter does not specialize. It generalizes with extreme efficiency. There is a documented case in which a family group of giant river otters was observed engaging a juvenile black caiman, not retreating, not avoiding, but actively pursuing and eliminating the threat. The confrontation lasted less than 4 minutes. That detail does not fit the mental model most people carry about otters. Some researchers suggest that the social intelligence of this species is more complex than current classification systems acknowledge, that what appears to be instinctive behavior may involve a form of decision making that deserves more serious examination. That question, too, remains open. What is no longer open is the question of their survival. Giant river otter populations have declined by over 80% in the last century. They now survive in fragmented river systems, isolated communities that can no longer interact, cannot share genetic diversity, and are slowly losing the ecological connectivity they need to persist. The Amazon is becoming a collection of isolated rooms, and many of the things that live in it are now trapped alone, in corridors that are growing narrower. Number 7. The pattern that should not exist: Amazon jaguar, Panthera onca. Up until this point, these animals have been extraordinary, but they exist within a framework that science can largely account for. Here, the territory becomes more complex. The Amazon jaguar is not simply a large cat. Each represents something that evolutionary biologists continue to examine carefully: an apex predator that has adapted to one of the most extreme environments on Earth, with a degree of specialization that exceeds what most generalist predators achieve. The rosette patterns on its coat, the circular markings that distinguish it from leopards and cheetahs, are unique to individuals. No two jaguars share the same pattern. Researchers use these patterns for identification in the same way human fingerprints are used. But the deeper anomaly is behavioral. Jaguars do not hunt the way most apex predators hunt. They do not chase, they do not exhaust prey over long distances. They position, they wait, and they strike with a single, specific target, The skull. The jaguar's bite is the most precisely directed of any large cat. It targets the juncture between the skull and the top vertebra, a point that, when penetrated correctly, results in immediate neurological collapse. This is not a generalized attack. It is a specific technique. Where that technique was learned, whether through individual acquisition or something encoded deeper, is not fully understood. What makes the Amazon jaguar more unsettling still is its relationship to water. Unlike most large cats, jaguars actively seek aquatic prey. They have been documented swimming long distances across river systems, not in avoidance, but in pursuit. They hunt caimans in the water, moving into the caiman's own environment with apparent confidence. A jaguar entering a black caiman's river system is not avoiding the apex predator of that water. It is hunting it. There are indigenous communities in the deeper Amazon that do not categorize the jaguar as an animal in the conventional sense. Their cosmologies position it at a boundary between the world that can be observed and the world that cannot. Whether that perspective contains information that Western taxonomy has missed is a question worth sitting with. This is the point where most documentaries would offer reassurance. This one cannot. What follows is no longer about remarkable animals in a remarkable place. What follows concerns a system that is actively disappearing, and what that disappearance may mean for things that have not yet been fully seen. Number 6. The ancient witness giant South American river turtle, Podocnemus expansa. There is a date that researchers occasionally reference when discussing this species: 90 million years. That is the approximate period during which the ancestral lineage of this turtle has existed on Earth. To hold that number properly, the dinosaurs that existed when this lineage began were not yet extinct. The giant South American river turtle survived whatever ended the Cretaceous period. It survived the transformation of the continent. It survived the formation of the Amazon basin itself. It reached lengths exceeding 3 feet, weights above 90 kilograms, and established a reproductive pattern that relied on specific Amazon sandbars called turtle beaches, where females return annually in enormous congregations to nest. These congregations were once described as one of the great wildlife spectacles on the continent, thousands of turtles emerging from a single river system simultaneously. That spectacle is gone. The nesting beaches have been systematically disrupted. Egg collection, sand mining, riverside development, motorized river traffic. Each element has reduced the congregation by degrees. What remains is a fragmented population attempting to maintain a behavior pattern that evolved to function at scale. The females still attempt to return, but the beaches they return to are often no longer there. A species that survived 90 million years of planetary change is now facing a challenge it did not evolve to meet: the systematic elimination of the specific conditions it requires to reproduce. There is a term researchers use for this: ecological memory loss. The behavior persists. The environment that gave it meaning does not. Number 5. The boundary animal Amazon tapir, Tapirus terrestris. Some animals are difficult to categorize, not because they are extraordinary, but because they exist at the edge of several categories simultaneously. The Amazon tapir is one of those animals. Its extended, prehensile nose, flexible, muscular, capable of independent movement, is not a trunk and not a snout. It occupies a morphological space between these structures. It functions as an olfactory instrument of remarkable sensitivity, capable of detecting plant material, water sources, and potential threats from distances measured in kilometers. Its body, black, substantial, moving through dense vegetation with a silence disproportionate to its size, creates a visual impression that has genuinely unsettled researchers encountering it unexpectedly in low light. Multiple early field accounts describe the tapir as producing a profound sense of wrongness upon first encounter, not because it is dangerous, but because its morphology does not immediately resolve into anything familiar. It occupies an evolutionary position close to rhinoceroses and horses, but predates both in its ancestral lineage. What is more significant, ecologically, is its function. The tapir is one of the Amazon's primary seed dispersers. It consumes vegetation across enormous ranges and deposits the seeds of those plants across territories that would otherwise be inaccessible to passive dispersal. When tapir populations decline, plant communities begin to change. Specific tree species that depend on tapir dispersal fail to regenerate in areas they historically occupied. The forest reshapes itself, subtly, gradually, in ways that are not visible until the shift is already irreversible. Some researchers describe the tapir as an invisible architect of the Amazon's structure. Its decline is not simply the loss of a species. It is the loss of a process, one that the forest cannot replace from within itself. Number 4. The armored anomaly, giant armadillo, Priodontes maximus. This is where the Amazon's capacity for the genuinely improbable becomes difficult to dismiss. The giant armadillo reaches 5 feet in length. Its recorded weight exceeds 60 kilograms. Its keratin shell, the overlapping plates that cover its upper body, is dense enough that documented accounts describe small caliber rounds failing to penetrate it. That is not metaphor. That is a material property. When threatened, the giant armadillo can curl into a near-complete sphere, presenting its shell in all directions simultaneously. In this configuration, most predators in the Amazon cannot breach its defenses. But the more extraordinary feature is behavioral. The giant armadillo is one of the Amazon's primary excavators. Its foreclaws, disproportionately large relative to its body, can penetrate hardened soil that resists most other digging animals. It creates burrow systems of considerable depth. Those burrows do not belong exclusively to the armadillo. Documented studies have found that giant armadillo burrows become habitats for dozens of other Amazon species. Mammals, reptiles, insects, amphibians, that could not otherwise survive in that specific microenvironment. When a giant armadillo abandons a burrow system, the community of species that depended on that structure disperses or collapses. A single animal, through its excavation behavior, is maintaining the conditions for dozens of other species to persist. The giant armadillo is not simply an armored curiosity. It is, in a specific and measurable way, a creator of habitats. Its population is declining. The habitats it creates are declining with it. Number 3. The engineered feeder giant anteater, Myrmecophaga tridactyla. They're animals that appear, upon first encounter, to have been designed rather than evolved. The giant anteater produces that impression. Its tubular skull contains no teeth. Its tongue, which extends beyond 2 feet, is covered in a sticky substance and capable of retracting and re-extending at speeds exceeding 150 times per minute. Its foreclaws are among the most powerful of any mammal relative to its body weight, capable of tearing open reinforced termite mounds that human hands cannot breach. Every element of its anatomy is precisely calibrated to a single function: the extraction and consumption of insects from sealed underground structures. But the function it serves ecologically exceeds its apparent specialization. The giant anteater is the Amazon's primary termite regulator. A single adult consumes approximately 35,000 insects per Dalton Y. Without that regulation, termite colonies in specific Amazon ecosystems would expand beyond the system's capacity to contain them, affecting soil structure, root systems, and ultimately vegetation patterns. What appears to be a feeding behavior is actually a maintenance function. The animal's disturbing visual quality, its elongated snout, its dense, coarse fur that hangs in asymmetrical planes, its gait that appears mechanically improbable, creates an impression that several field researchers have described in similar terms. It does not look like it belongs to the same evolutionary context as its environment. Some have suggested it looks as though it arrived from a different epoch. That impression is not entirely inaccurate. The giant anteater's ancestral lineage diverged from other placental mammals at a period so early that its relationship to most South American fauna is distant in ways that are still being mapped. It is, in some genuine sense, a survivor from a different world, still performing a function that the current world depends on. Number 2. The aerial sovereign harpy eagle, Harpia harpyja. If you were standing in the Amazon's interior canopy layer, which reaches, in places, above 130 feet, and you heard the sound researchers describe as a low, sustained scream moving through the upper branches, this is the moment where hesitation would be entirely appropriate. The harpy eagle is the most powerful aerial predator in the Western Hemisphere. Its wingspan exceeds 7 feet. Its talons, the gripping structures it uses to capture prey, are larger than the hand of an adult human. The gripping force of those talons has been measured at over 110 pounds of pressure per square inch. It hunts monkeys, sloths, large lizards, small deer, juvenile caimans. It hunts them from above, approaching through the canopy at speeds that eliminate any meaningful response time for its prey. The strike itself is calculated in fractions of seconds. What makes the harpy eagle particularly difficult to account for within conventional predator models is its navigational ability within the canopy. The Amazon's upper canopy is a three-dimensional maze of branches, vines, leaves, and irregular light, a structure that should make high-speed flight impossible for a bird of its size. The harpy eagle moves through it at hunting speed. How it maps and processes that environment in real time is not fully understood. Its visual processing capabilities have been studied, and what has been found suggests a level of environmental modeling that approaches something researchers hesitate to describe with conventional terminology. When a harpy eagle is active in a section of forest, the behavioral changes in the animal communities below it are immediate and total. Troops of monkeys go silent, sloths cease movement. Animals that are not prey species for the eagle still respond as though the entire atmosphere of the environment has changed. That response, cross-species, immediate, and comprehensive, suggests that the harpy eagle's presence communicates something that has no direct equivalent in the animal communities below it. What it communicates precisely has not been fully articulated in the research. Number 1. The river's final architect, Amazon giant catfish, Brachyplatystoma filamentosum. This is the deepest layer, not the most dramatic, not the most visually striking, but the most difficult to fully account for. The Amazon giant catfish, known locally as the filhote, and scientifically as Brachyplatystoma filamentosum, reaches documented lengths exceeding 9 feet and weights above 200 kilograms. It migrates. Not locally, not regionally. It performs one of the longest freshwater migrations of any fish on Earth, a documented journey of over 5,000 kilometers, from the mouth of the Amazon deep into its western Andean tributaries, where it spawns in cold, high-altitude water, and then, if it survives, returns. The duration of this migration means that a single individual giant catfish may spend years in transit, moving between ecological zones, transporting nutrients, consuming prey populations, and regulating fish communities across an enormous range. It is not simply an animal in the Amazon system. It is a thread that connects the system across its full length. When this species declines, and it is declining, the connections it maintains begin to break. Fish populations it regulated expand without constraint in some zones. Nutrient flows it enabled begin to reduce in others. The cold water tributaries where it spawned, already altered by upstream agricultural runoff, become less hospitable to the juveniles that would complete the cycle. The migration does not stop suddenly. It frays. Individual after individual fails to complete the journey. The population that reaches the spawning grounds decreases. The population that returns decreases further, and the system that depended on their passage begins, quietly and invisibly, to change. There is no single moment where this becomes irreversible. That is the nature of systemic collapse in complex ecosystems. It does not announce itself, it accumulates. What you have encountered in this documentary are 10 species from a single ecosystem. Not the most extreme, not the most obscure. Simply 10 points of entry into a system of such complexity that the scientific community, in honest moments, acknowledges that its full inventory may never be completed. The Amazon continues. In its interior regions, the river systems that have no road access, the canopy zones that satellite imaging cannot fully penetrate, the underground water tables that surface surveys do not reach. There are organisms that have not been documented, not suspected, not theorized, simply present and unknown. Some researchers estimate that more than half of all Amazonian species remain unnamed. That is not a historical gap. That is a current condition. The world's largest biological library is being dismantled at a rate that exceeds our ability to read it. What has been documented is extraordinary. What has not been documented may be more significant still, and the window during which it might be is not unlimited. If this documentary raised questions that feel unresolved, they are unresolved. The Amazon does not provide conclusions. It provides evidence that something larger than current understanding is present. What that something is has not yet been fully determined.